Once upon a time, there was a little boy, his belly full of laughter, his life full of joy, until one day something changed, stripped his innocence away. The hole inside making space for the devil to come and play. His dreams gone forever, he grew up way too fast. An endless night of crocodiles and watches made of glass. He grew into a villain, the taste of vengeance on his tongue, craving to make his enemies pay for the misdeeds they had done. Instead, he found a darling girl and refused to let her go. For what better way to make the man pay than to steal his little shadow? What did I just read? Hello, loves. Welcome to my bedroom, because I'm in the middle of a reno and have exactly 0 places to film that doesn't show you an immense mess in the background. I don't know about you, but there are some books that I'm just sort of iffy on, and I love when I can get a secondary opinion before I spend money on buying it, before I expel energy on reading it. And the book I will be reading, so you don't have to, is called Hooked. I'm gonna take you throughout the next couple days and give you a play-by-play on my opinions, on my reactions, on how I'm feeling as I read it, which I'm hoping will be very entertaining for all of you. All right, let me jump you to the day I started reading this, and at the end, I'll meet you back here to give you my final thoughts. Okay, well, I had a winter jacket ready and everything, but I don't think I'm gonna need it today. Hello, fellow YouTubers. I'm Cassandra Joy, and welcome to my channel. Your lens is rather dirty. Everything I own is a little extra dusty after doing all of the reno in my loft. Unfortunately, we're kind of at a standstill just for the moment. I'll share all about that in the next reno video. But that means I get a little free time to just do an old-fashioned vlog. I have some new books. I've also dubbed this Coach Tote as my book tote from now on. And I have never filmed a readathon. Not once. And I have 3 books that are all begging to be read. One is called The Writing Retreat. Another is called The Turn of the Key. And the one I've just started reading is called Hooked, which is a Peter Pan retelling. That's the wind. Can you hear that? Anyway, this day is rather rainy, a bit blustery, and just the perfect conditions for a cozy day to read. So I thought I would get my errands done first, get them out of the way, and then spend the rest of the day reading. This lipstick is... what is the brand? I don't know what the brand is. Bell and Argent, and it's the color 3 Plays. It's the perfect nude. I love it. So we'll see how we get on, but first, errands. And if you want the vibe for this book, at least as it starts out, I would advise you listen to 2 songs. One is called Vendetta by Unsecret, and the other is called No Mercy by Zayd Wolf. Both, I think, will do a pretty good job of getting you in the zone for how Hook starts out. Whew. Alright, I've got some returns to make, and I'm definitely taking my life in my hands a little bit because it's only just stopped raining and I'm not going to take an umbrella because I don't have enough hands. So we're going to see if this decision bites me in the butt. Errand 1 done. That took very little time. The return was for my mom, it wasn't even for me. I never go into Kohl's because things are so exorbitantly expensive. This is why I thrift, because I just can't afford full-priced items. I did attempt to look at the candles. They had some spring things just right in the entryway, and there was one, excuse you, there was one called Joy, ironically enough, that smelled so good. Something mango, so sweet and fresh and summery. $20 that I didn't have, so I didn't get it. Now that errand 1 is done, I thought I would take a second to read you the back cover, just so you can have an idea of what it's about. The back is actually a poem, which I thought was really cool. Once upon a time, there was a little boy, his belly full of laughter, his life full of joy, until one day something changed, stripped his innocence away. the hole inside making space for the devil to come and play. His dreams gone forever, he grew up way too fast. An endless night of crocodiles and watches made of glass. He grew into a villain, the taste of vengeance on his tongue, craving to make his enemies pay for the misdeeds they had done. Instead, he found a darling girl and refused to let her go. For what better way to make the man pay than to steal his little shadow? It's so good. And then another cool detail I saw is this page right here. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up. It actually has a playlist of songs that the author would like you to listen to as you read. I think that is such a cool idea because music is so intrinsically connected to my writing. I cannot write without music, and even though the music has nothing to do with what's happening in the book, it does inspire the right mood, the right setting. It gets me in the zone. So to have a playlist that gets your readers in the zone, I might have to steal that idea for my own book because that's genius. And the dedication reads, for anyone who's been the villain in someone else's story. We get to see a character named Jamie Barry, obviously a take on J.M. Barrie, the author of Peter Pan. He's introduced right away, and he kind of gives me Hook vibes, not gonna lie. He's not called that, but I'm wondering if that might be a future alias for him. We get a taste of this guy in the prologue. In chapter 1, we meet Wendy. She is the daughter of bigwig businessman Peter Michaels. He's been in Forbes as the top businessman for something like 5 years running. He's a big deal. He's also sounding like a kind of absentee father. Wendy, being the oldest and a total daddy's girl, even though he doesn't have a lot of time for her, wants to be the good girl, wants his approval. She has a little brother named Jonathan. Oh, I just got it. Peter Michaels, as in Michael, because there is no Michael in this story, there's just Wendy and Jonathan. Interesting! This is why I love Peter Pan retellings, because it's just so good when you piece all the little things together. Wendy has just been invited by some girls to go to the Jolly Roger, which is a bar, apparently. One of the girls has made mention of a mystery man named Hook, who will be at the Jolly Roger, who she apparently is wanting the attention of. Wendy has no idea who he is. I'm thinking Hook is Jamie Barry. That's my prediction, saying it now. Before I can read any more, I have one more errand I need to run. Well, technically 2 more, but the last one is coffee, which I feel like doesn't count as an errand. That's a privilege. That's not an errand. That is a treat to myself. I wanted to get some groceries. That was the plan. I wanted to get it online so I didn't have to go in physically into the grocery store, but look, that's what the website's doing. It's revealing nothing. It's like it can't load. So apparently the website just doesn't like me, which means I'm gonna have to go into the grocery store. I feel like there are 2 kinds of people in life. You either love to go get your groceries, it's therapeutic, it's enjoyable, you love going through all the aisles and looking at all of the produce, and then there's people like me who are like, get me in and out as fast as possible, I hate this place. Let me know which one you are in the comments below. Fine, I'll go get my groceries inside the store. I know it's first world problems, I get it, okay? I'm not denying that. I just dislike it strongly. Now I can go home, get cozy, and continue reading about Hook. I feel like it's a good sign if the story is already staying in my head and I've only read the prologue in chapter 1. I feel like that's a good sign. A strong start. We'll see if it can hold up through the rest of the book. Alright, I'm sitting in front of my empty china cabinet because that is literally the only filming background I have available to me. I can't get to my couch, I can't get to my window bench, I have no desk to sit at. This is it. Living in a reno. You do what you gotta do. Just finished chapter 5, and I will say this is definitely on the darker side. So in the last few chapters, we've gone with Wendy to the Jolly Roger and met James, or Jamie Barry. He goes by James now. It's been about 8-ish years since the murder we were presented with at the start of the book, and James is a presence. Simply calling him a bad boy is a description that would fall epically short. He is definitely the kind of bad boy that your dad would have nightmares about you dating. I didn't go in knowing anything about this book other than that it's a Peter Pan retelling. I have a feeling that there's going to be some spice involved in this book, just from the language used, the imagery presented to you. Once you've read enough, you can just tell that about a book. I'll lead with saying, for the most part, I don't mind some spice, but I'm finding that every single book I pick up and go in blind with has a lot. I do have a friend who has read this, and all she told me was it's dark and it's a little heavy, so just go in knowing that. So I was prepared for a bad boy. I was prepared for violence or darkness. Those kind of tidbits I don't mind knowing because it does help me get my mindset right going into a book. So far we've learned that James and Peter Michaels have a past. We don't know what that past entails, but we do know that James's favorite, most dear daydream is to end Peter Michaels. And then coincidences of coincidences, Peter Michaels' daughter Wendy just happens to stumble into the Jolly Roger that James co-owns and has a little run-in with James himself. He makes quite a first impression. Let me read you their meet cute. Swear words omitted because I don't curse. Wendy is on her way to find the ladies' room. She loses her balance in the hallway and trips, slamming into someone. Crap, I'm sorry. She doesn't say crap, she says another word. My hands reach up instinctively, landing against a solid wall of muscle. Rough palms grasp my shoulders, goosebumps sprouting along my skin from the heat of the stranger's touch. Filthy words for such a pretty mouth. I may have also failed to mention that James is British, which is just part of every perfect bad boy trifecta. The deep, accented voice slides across my skin like silk and wraps itself around me, a shiver skating down my spine. His grip tightens, palms moving until they brush my upper arms. My hands are still pressed against his chest, the black fabric of his suit soft under the pads of my fingers. My breath stutters as he sucks me into his gaze, his eyes like cerulean glass, an almost haunting chill to their beauty. And that is Wendy and James meet cute. Because of his mysterious past with Peter and despising him, he definitely has an ulterior motive when it comes to Wendy. He finds her attractive, he finds her interesting, but she gives off a very innocent vibe that he would very much like to corrupt just to spite her father. I have a feeling though, this is just my prediction, the more he gets to know her, the more he's gonna fall for her. And I don't think that will negate his hate for Peter, but it might change his tactic on how Wendy is involved with his grand plan. I'm predicting he might have to choose between his lady love and revenge. But that's as far as I've gotten so far. Definitely up there on the spice level already, which was kind of a shock, but it does make sense with his character and his character's profession. I didn't mention what James does. Let me fill you in on that really quick. James and his partner Rufus run a drug company. The drug they push is called pixie dust. James does seem to have the freedom to do away with people whenever he likes, so I'm not sure how that works if he just has that amount of power, sort of like a mob boss. And then on top of everything, Peter Michaels, who doesn't know James is James, has decided to join this drug company and become partners with Rufus and James, which James is just thrilled about. Rufus, his partner, has no idea of this past between them, and James is rather put off the idea of partnering up with his mortal enemy. That's where I am so far. I'll keep you posted. So I tried to fit my mug with the theme and got my most dark, brooding, mysterious looking mug that I own. And I feel like this just really encapsulates the book. I'm gonna let that steep, see if I can read. Oops, oh no, I lost my bookmark. My pretty bookmark that my friend Nicole made me. Look how gorgeous. It's got gold and rose gold, copper flecks. So pretty. While this is steeping, I'm gonna keep reading. You'll have to excuse all of the disarray behind me. Update, I just finished chapter 6, and whoo, that was intense. My friend did warn me that it was violent. That was some unhinged stuff. I just read. To be fair, it happened to a bad guy, so I don't feel bad that it happened. It was a character that was a dreadful human being, and the world is honestly much better without him, but my word, Hook or James or whoever you want to call him did not hold back one iota. He's got a bit of a temper and a lot of baggage to work through, and a thing about ticking clocks. That somehow is a trigger for him, making all of these horrible traumatic memories from his past that we don't really know much about but can guess at, makes it come rushing back, which triggers his temper. And this poor schmuck, not even poor, he was awful. This awful schmuck was on the receiving end. I think you can all guess, met his untimely end by James's hooked knife. Okay, that definitely has set the tone for the book. I don't know how to give you a gauge because everybody's different, their tolerances are different. All I can say is that the violence written in this book doesn't even come close to making me feel that nausea, twisted in my gut feeling that the Book of Lost Things did at the end. In that book, there were a lot of quick fire things that sort of gave you a bigger picture of the villain and the things he was capable of, the things he did, and boy, that just made me sick to my stomach to feel, which is great props for an author to be able to conjure that feeling in a reader. That takes skill. Not nice skill, but good skill. So anything regarding that, violence or what have you, I will always hold up to the candle of the Book of Lost Things. In this case, basically, it wasn't nice, but I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. Now on to chapter 7. Where we get to see Wendy's perspective again. It flips between James and Wendy, and James has propositioned her for a date, and Wendy hasn't exactly agreed, but I'm thinking she doesn't have much choice. But she's not opposed to the idea. She finds him very alluring and dashing, mysterious, and oh so handsome. So I don't think she's gonna oppose to the idea, but I also don't think she has much choice because James strikes me as the kind of dude who isn't used to being told no and is very used to getting what he wants. Let's see how that goes. Okay, I've just finished chapter 15 and I think I'm gonna call it a night for reading. I'd like to decompress and watch some YouTube videos, but I have read enough to where I have some thoughts. Wendy and James have had their first date and subsequent spicy moment. I'm trying to describe this so delicately. James is definitely a dominant person, if you catch my drift, and there's just a thing that happens that it gave me the ick. And reading that scene ended up doing the opposite of what it was supposed to do, which is heat things up. It just felt like a bucket of cold water, which doesn't bode well for the rest of the book. Truly, it's just a preference thing. Putting that ick moment aside, I do really like the character of James. I find him really fascinating. Having read as many books as I do, I've been introduced to a lot of villains, but I've rarely been given their true inner thought perspective. And seeing James's perspective, his particular view of the world and what's filtering that perspective is really fascinating. Everything that's happened in his past is driving his present, and you're getting little glimpses, little tastes of what made him become who he is. It's just a side of villainy that I haven't been introduced to, at least not properly, in books before. So I'd like to keep reading just for that purpose. I find it super cool. Concerning villains in the books I've read, you either get a villain that feels a little lackluster, just sort of is the bad guy for the point of being the bad guy, but there's no real motivation behind him or her. And then there are villains that are really good at being bad. You hate their guts, you cannot wait for them to get their comeuppance, but you don't get their perspective. In this book, you get a villain who is good at being a villain. You get a troubled backstory, bits and pieces at least, and you get his inner mind workings, getting to see through his eyes. The one thing I am kind of holding out hope for is a redemption arc. I don't know if we'll get it. The reason I feel like I have a little hope is because he wasn't always bad. He's a person that bad things happened to, and he adapted. He is not a hero, I will tell you that right now. He has some problems that he needs to go to therapy for. I'm intrigued by his character. I think he's very well written, but I also won't lie to you, I have definitely had an ick moment, and I'm worried that the ick moments will continue as like a running theme, and I just don't know if I'll be able to finish the book. But that's why I'm reading it, so you don't have to. Anyway, those are my thoughts for the night. I'm gonna decompress, watch a little YouTube, and pick it up again tomorrow. Good morning. Running a little more behind than I'd like to be. And I don't know how that happened either because I got up at the normal time. Didn't do anything different other than film some things, but that took no extra time. All right, GPS. How much damage control do we need to do today? I always look at the guesstimated time of when I'm gonna arrive. Please don't let me be late. Well, it can't find a signal. Perfect. Okay, so the morning's starting off a little frazzled. Well, I'm gonna go to work. I will see you on my break.
You can call me stupid. Yes, you can call me sheep. You can say I'm lazy. You can say I'm weak. You think that using her would get to me. And if you're right, then you're in trouble, D. 'Cause I won't break, no, I know I won't wait. You're in trouble, D.
Okay, I'm in the middle of chapter 19 and I have more thoughts. I'm also in a different car right now. This is my boss's car. I use it to pick up the kids, you know. At this point in the story, Hook, or James, has officially met Peter Michaels. We learn a little bit more about Peter himself. We already know that Hook has a deep-rooted hate for the man, and we finally get a little glimpse as to why. So I mentioned that Peter Michaels is a businessman, but what I didn't mention is that he owns an airline called Neverland, as in Neverland, but with air in the middle. I thought that was really clever. Peter is interested in going into business with Rue and Hook to distribute pixie dust all over the world. Rue and Hook are sort of limited at this point in how far they can deliver their pixie dust. Peter would allow them to have a much larger pool of clientele, which from a strategical standpoint makes sense. Apparently, Peter sought them out, not the other way around, and I think he sees a financial gain to working with Hook and Rue. Hook obviously does not want to work with Peter, but he can't tell Rue that because Rue doesn't know anything about his backstory, which brings me to why Hook hates Peter so much. Hook's parents were very wealthy. Hook's father was a lot like Peter, only Hook's father was very family-oriented. Hook felt very loved as a child. He wanted for nothing. At some point, his father decided to go into business with Peter Michaels. This is all from a child's perspective. He doesn't know the ins and outs of what business arrangement they had. He doesn't know what went wrong. He just knows that business arrangement ended in a folded note, his father going white as a sheet as they board one of Peter's private Neverland jets minutes before the plane goes down in flames, killing everybody on board except for James, leaving him to the horrible hands of his uncle, who not only treated him horribly but abused him, sentencing him to a horrible childhood until the age of 13 when Rue found him and took him in as his own. Very much like a Nathan Drake situation. If you played any of the Uncharted video games, it's sort of like that story where orphan meets bad guy, but bad guy has a heart of gold, and they sort of form a father-son relationship. And I really like their friendship. I think it's so wholesome. Probably the only wholesome thing about James / Hook in the whole book. Now we get to my thoughts. This is a 5 out of 5 on the hot pepper spice range. I mentioned last night as I was reading that there were parts of it that gave me an ick, and I do think it just comes down to preference. I am not the kind of person who enjoys a dominating, submissive kind of relationship between couples. It's just not my vibe, and that's very prevalent in this book. It makes sense for James's character. Completely makes sense. So I'm not mad that the author chose to do that because character-wise, I get it. It's just not my preference. And I also can't decide if I even want James redeemed. I think there's potential for a redemption arc. I just don't know if I like him well enough to want it. I do think he's getting feelings for Wendy, despite his best efforts not to. I think she, in her innate goodness, makes him feel less vile. She's definitely a pawn in his game to get revenge on Peter. The idea of making Wendy come to the dark side, for lack of a better way to phrase it, it's just another layer on the onion of destroying Peter. Now Peter, I don't have enough information on him to really form an opinion, other than the fact that he is a very absentee father, giving Wendy all of the stereotypical daddy issues. She hero worships him, begs for any drop of approval and attention she can get from him, and doesn't get much. Poor Jonathan, the little brother, is completely forgotten in his father's eyes. Wendy is treasured by Peter, but not enough for him to put family first and business second. That, I think, is his fatal flaw and will come back to bite him in the behind at some point. That's my prediction. I'm almost to chapter 21, which is about the halfway point. I'm 80% enjoying it. I do want to finish it. I want to see it through, but I am struggling a bit. There's just something that recoils inside of me at the thought of Wendy disregarding all of her alarm bells, allowing herself to be fully sucked in to the orbit of James. Not that I fully blame her. James is a very magnetizing kind of person, but he is not by any stretch of the imagination a healthy choice of guy. But again, it does make sense for her character. She is so attention starved that she's sort of willing to get it from anyone who will give it to her. But the fact that she's being used, and I know she's being used by James and has no idea, it should make me want to root for a redemption arc for James. But it's really making me want to just put down the book. But that could change. You know, we have half a book left where a lot could happen. So we will see. I'm gonna read a little bit while I wait for the kids to get out of school and check back with you later. I'm quickly running out of places to film in my loft. So we're sitting in front of my fridge. I just finished reading chapter 21. The following clips are my reactions to that chapter. I'll explain afterward. Wait, what? They've been on 2 dates and they're already, okay. Oh. Oh. Oh, ew. Oh, you don't tell someone that. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Ugh, no. Mm-mm. What did I just read? So that happened. 2 dates. They went on 2 dates and they've just... I'm not gonna lie, I'm this close to DNFing this book, and if you don't know what DNFing means, it means do not finish. I mean, I was gonna say it should come with a warning, but it technically does. The author gives you an author's note with trigger warnings in it, which, you know, I read. I also have my own opinion on trigger warnings because I know they're meant well, but they also can ruin the plot. Like, they give away too much. But one of the things the author says in the trigger warning is trust the process. I'm having a lot of trouble trusting the process. I am pretty much at the halfway point now, and I'm really tempted to just stop reading. I can't stomach it. I feel like I have a pretty decent threshold, and I know there is definitely an audience for this, but I am not that audience. This is doing nothing for me other than making my insides recoil and grossing me the heck out. If I wasn't filming this video, I would put this down. I wouldn't finish it, and I'd be fine with that. But because I'm filming this video, I want to give some kind of conclusion. So I think I'm just gonna skip to the last few chapters to try to figure out plot-wise what happens, and maybe skip all of the nastiness. I mean, it's getting to the point where my soul is squirming uncomfortably. It has had enough. And I always listen to those warning signs as a way of gauging my boundaries, and it's telling me to stop. But for you guys, I think I'm just gonna skip all this middle stuff, get to the end, and figure out at least plot-wise what happens. That way I can give you a conclusion to the story. All right, I'm gonna skip to chapter 44. I kind of glanced through the last few pages and it seems like things are wrapping up around here, so I'm gonna read and see what happens and then give you a final rundown of my thoughts. So I'm still reading, and I feel like I'm probably going to sum up this book with a few negatives, but I would like to list a few positives that I really am enjoying about the book. I think the way the author took characters we know and love from Neverland and threw them into a modern setting where they fit. Hook being a mob boss, Rue, his partner, who I only just realized is probably supposed to represent Rufio from Hook, the movie with Robin Williams. If you've never seen it, very cute. Oh no, my battery's flashing. Okay, let me get inside and we'll continue this conversation. There we go, fresh battery, all fixed. I've also got coffee in hand because I just got home from work and I need a pick-me-up. I'm actually inserting this clip after I've already filmed the review portion because I realized in hindsight that I didn't give it a lot of accolades, so I wanted to make sure to list the positive parts of the book so that it wasn't just a book bashing session. Because believe it or not, there were a lot of things I really enjoyed. First of all, it takes a lot of imagination and creativity to take a fantasy world and throw it into a modern setting, and the author did an excellent job doing that. Having Hook be a mob boss, perfect. Having Rue be the partner, if in fact he's based off of Rufio, was very interesting. Gleaming bits and pieces of the characters' personalities and exemplifying them if they had been born in a modern setting was really effective. Peter's fatal flaw in Peter Pan is the fact that he is so adventure hungry that he loses sight of what's really important. He has a lot of trouble assigning value to long-term things and prioritizes fleeting in the moment urges and desires. Peter Michaels in the book is very similar. He's always chasing after the next adventure. He's always wanting the next best thing and forgetting his family in the long run. Either in description or by name, the Lost Boys were scattered everywhere. There were the set of twins, there was Curly. If I remember right, I think Nibs was in there too. And even though they didn't play a huge part in the plot, it was still fun to be like, oh, that's from Peter Pan. Oh, yep, that character's from Peter Pan. It was really satisfying to sort of find all of these hidden Easter eggs. Even the phrase "straight on till morning" was incorporated. And then at the end, when this whole big climactic showdown happens, Hook even says, "Bad form, Peter. This fight is hardly fair." And I just loved that that was included. The story is peppered with a lot of those satisfying Easter eggs. I thought that was very clever. The way Hook was written was fascinating. He wasn't evil for evil's sake. I liked that. He had a reason. He had been broken and reshaped into something thorny and dangerous, and it made sense why. I think a lot of authors hold back on their depictions of a villain and their actions, but this author didn't. There was a lot of violence in the book, which I didn't have a problem with, funny enough. None of that fazed me. I liked that his flaws were utterly on show. There was no sugarcoating them, and I liked that the author didn't hold any of that back from the reader. I still stand by what I'm about to say in the next clip concerning the things I didn't like about the book, but I don't want you walking away thinking the book was horrible from beginning to end, because it wasn't. It had a lot of amazing, clever, creative moments scattered throughout that I absolutely adored. I just wanted to add that in to be fair and sort of temper some of the things I'm about to say, which I'm sure you're all very curious about, so I won't leave you hanging. Enjoy my fresh off the book reaction, because it's raw and it's real. The ending was interesting. It had a lot of twists and turns, a lot of betrayals, a lot of people who you assume are trustworthy all of a sudden show that they're not. Lots of murder, basically an entire gunfight happening inside of a cave, which ends with Wendy committing murder. Gladly. I mean, I am not the kind of person who likes to speak negatively about someone's hard work as someone who wants to become a published author someday. I dread the day where someone makes a review about my book and it's a negative one, so I don't want to come across as mean or hateful. This is just my opinion. Like I said before, there is totally a target audience for this. I am not that audience. I don't mind dark and twisty, but this was dark and it was twisty, and not in any way that gave me any kind of joy. The style of romance in it is just not my cup of tea. It's a little too yucky. You know when you go on a date and the guy just gives you the ick and you come home wanting to just scrub the night off of your skin? That's how I feel about my time with this book, which is so disappointing because I had such high hopes for this book. It's a Neverland retelling. You guys know how I feel about that. I'm gonna be nice and chalk it up to just being a me thing. I don't regret giving this book a chance. I prefer to go into books totally blind. I discover a lot more gems that way. Hooked had the wondrous potential to be great, and it just wasn't. Whew, this was a doozy of a book to start this kind of series off with. I'd like to do more of these kind of videos in the future where I take you along throughout my reading process and kind of give you insights as I read it. I enjoy those videos a lot. I just didn't expect to start off with such a stinker as a first attempt. But hopefully you guys at least found this video entertaining, and if you do dare to read this book, all I can say is good luck and Godspeed. No judgment if you like it, but not for me. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to continue this into a series. I like the idea a lot because it will force me to keep up on my reading and make a dent in my TBR shelf. Thank you guys so much for going on this harrowing journey with me. You're gonna have to let me know in the comments if you actually enjoyed this, but either way, I hope to see you again in a future upload. If you found this video even remotely entertaining, please consider hitting the subscribe button and clicking the notification bell so that you never miss a future video from me. I upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays, both at 6 a.m. and sometimes on Mondays. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Love you guys. Mwah.